This is Monica Shimonik. I'm with Moms Unshackled, and I'm a course creator, workshop creator. I've been a coach working with moms exclusively going through custody hell since 2016. And I wrote a book several years back called Broken System, Broken Heart. So I'm a published author as well. And I primarily worked as a health and mindset coach for a number of years until a year ago when I started to build digital courses for moms and dads. So my main course, The Best Interest of the Parent, that gets released twice a year. I'm releasing that course in 2 weeks to everybody. So if you're interested in joining that course and learning more about it, you can click the link that I included in this description. But for today, we're going to be talking about overcoming the fears of defending yourself in the court system. Let me mess with my settings a little bit. Just give me a second. All right, I can't figure it out, but that's okay. We'll just move forward, right? It's like being in court. I've said this before. When the judge walks in and the other attorney walks in and you can't find your papers, you just have to just go, right? So we're going to be talking today about what is blocking you from standing up for yourself in this entire system, not just inside the courtroom, but what's blocking you from, say, putting your needs out there to the GAL or speaking up properly for yourself, batting for yourself. When you're in co-parenting therapy, what is stopping you from really truly letting your truth come through in these situations? Is it fear of the narcissistic parent, your ex? Is it fear of the judge? What is stopping us from really letting our truth show? Because, we're encouraged to lie about everything. Be on your best behavior. Don't show any emotion. Make sure that you don't disclose this, don't disclose that. Never say anything bad about the other parent. Don't act like your child has issues. I mean, you're encouraged to lie from the very beginning. And not only are you encouraged to lie, but you're encouraged to let all these people in very close to you that you might not trust right away, that you otherwise would not let into your inner circle so quickly. So we're kind of encouraged to let go of all these boundaries, all these natural mechanisms. And what is stopping us from not doing that and being who we really are, which is warrior, badass parents that we are? What is stopping us from being so where do you shine in your life? Some of you are talented musicians. Some of you are really good at work. Some of you are on top of your sales team. Some of you are really great public speakers. Some of you are teachers. Some of you run medical practices. Some of you are taking care of sick parents. So a lot of you have tons and tons of talent and tons of responsibility that you're really good at. You just nail it. But when it comes to family court, we get stripped down of all that stuff. And the inner 3-year-old comes out, or the petulant 14-year-old in us comes out. We just become people that we don't really want to be. And our best selves are just left at home when we go to into these meetings in these court hearings. Everything I share in this training is not legal advice. I have to say that all the time. I'm sorry, it's boring. Not legal advice. My background is in health and mindset coaching, not legal stuff. However, it's important that we know that this information is out there. So if I tell you something like, hey, you have the right to have your disability rights honored in the courtroom. Hi, Montana. You have the right to not be mistreated because you have a disability. So if I tell you that, that's not legal advice. That is something that you're going to find in any brochure, in any federal building, hopefully. You're going to find that if you go to the ADA website. This is information that you're going to find published everywhere. So I doubt that people who are publishing on their website aren't giving legal advice. And also, I talk about the Constitution quite a bit. Kids learn about the Constitution in 8th grade civics class, and none of that is legal advice. So putting information out there that's already published and widely available is not legal advice. I just say that just for the 1% of people who think I'm giving legal advice. So not legal advice. Health and mindset coaching exclusively, and I also give out information. That's one of the pillars of what I teach, is you need the information so that you could sharpen up the tools that you need to defend yourself in court properly. So I offer health and mindset coaching for parents so that they can show up to the court process as calmly and confidently as possible using empowerment and healing strategies. And so if you're in this training right now and you're live watching me, if you have any questions, go ahead and ask them in the chat. I will answer the questions at the end of the training. So if a question pops up, that's wonderful. If somebody else doesn't answer your question, then I'll answer it toward the end. I won't be ignoring you. So let me just pull up my notes here. So we're going to start here with the most common reasons why parents are not putting their true selves out there when they're in the court process. Now, when I say court process, again, talking to the GAL, talking to the kid's therapist, dealing with your ex, logging into Our Family Wizard, anything like that is, like, in my opinion, court related stuff. So when I say court process and you're not like showing up as your best self, that's what I'm referring to. The reason, one of the main reasons, and I've been working with parents for many years on this, is the mental work involved in filling out forms, learning your rights, things of that nature. All those processes is grueling. It's mentally exhausting. Opening up the practice book and learning how the different segments of the law work. Reading the Constitution and being like, okay, well, does the Fourth Amendment apply to me or not? Is this considered a search and seizure or not? Like, having to ask yourself questions like that can be very exhausting. It's frustrating, it's grueling, and it's also boring. You know, if it's not interesting, it's going to drain you faster. And so what we do is, as human beings, when we get in these mental tornadoes, we decide, you know what, this is way too freaking complicated. This is way too hard. I'm not going to do this. Because for some reason, we've decided that if something's hard, then it must be bad. When did we learn that? Who taught us that? We probably learned that when we were kids. If your parent was trying to protect you from being uncomfortable as a kid, your parent probably said, well, you shouldn't really do that. It's too hard for you. And we have just grown up into our 30s and 40s and 50s thinking, well, if it's too hard, I really shouldn't be doing it. Or if it's too hard, it's because I'm not cut out for this. If it's too hard, I'm not smart enough to do this. I should just hire an attorney or get someone else who knows what they're doing. And so we kind of cut ourselves short, or we sell ourselves short, and we assume that we're just not good enough to manage the academic side of what we're going through. There's a lot of facets. You know, there's this academic challenge that we're dealing with. There's an emotional challenge. Our kids are almost always being taken away from us, or we're getting threatened in some fashion. And so there's a lot of things at play here. We're spiritually challenged. You know, this whole like karma thing. If you believe in karma, if you believe in good versus evil, the golden rule, things of that nature, you're being spiritually challenged because this is not how you thought the world worked. You probably had a fairly decent life and didn't think that government could be so corrupt. And so there's like some spiritual issues there. There's some cognitive issues. There's some health issues if your health is breaking down. So there's lots of stuff happening. And so the last thing a lot of us want to do is open up a book and read really boring stuff that attorneys took 8 years to get through. And so what we do is we give up. We're like, screw it. You know, I can't figure this out. I'm just going to surrender, and whatever happens, happens. Let's just hope I get a good judge. Let's just hope I get a good GAL. There's nothing I could do to stop this. I'm not smart enough to intervene here. I'm not smart enough to do this thing. I'm not smart enough to file this motion. So I'm just going to quit. And so we really do sell ourselves short because we have what it takes to learn what we need to learn. 99% of us have what it takes to do what we need to do in court to defend ourselves properly. We do have it. Now, I'm not saying you could do it, you know, cleanly and without flaws and without mistakes. You're going to make mistakes, okay? Like, you didn't go to 8 years of law school, but that doesn't mean that you suck. Because we have something that these attorneys and these GALs and these judges do not have. We have a soul. I'm kidding, but it's true. But we also have a love for our children that you can't quantify. You can't monetize that. You can't recreate that in a job description. There's no person you could hire to ever substitute that role that you have in your child's life, which is a very sacred role. And that's not something that can be outsourced. And that's not something that can be replaced by paying somebody that works in the legal system. So what you are lacking in academic knowledge about the law, you gain back in grit, passion, love for your child, lots and lots of things. We'll see how deep we go into this topic because I'm going to talk more about that a little bit later. So I'm going to just give you a little anecdote here. So my 4-year-old daughter, I do this thing called HIT. I didn't know it was called HIT. I thought it was called HIIT. And I just found out a couple days ago that I've been saying it wrong because I'm Generation X and we're like halfway between millennial and baby boomer. So sometimes we get things wrong. But anyway, I've been doing HIT exercises for about maybe 2 months now. My 4-year-old just started to join me and she's really just working so hard. I'm like, whoa, you know. And she says to me, she goes, Mom, and she's like, she looks like she's ready to cry. She's like, Mom, this is so hard. This is so hard, Mom. And you know what I say to her? I go, yeah, it is hard, but you're doing a great job. And so by saying that, instead of saying, go sit on the couch, take a break, I mean, I could say that, but I don't. I was like, yeah, it is hard, but you're doing a wonderful job. I'm telling her that it's okay to do hard things. It's safe to do hard things. It's uncomfortable to do hard things, sure, but it's okay to be uncomfortable doing those hard things. And she's also learning how to read. She says, it's so hard. It's so hard to read. She's trying to formulate 3-letter words. I was like, yeah, it is hard, but you can do it. And so I don't want her to think that if something's hard, it's bad. And I know I was raised that if something was hard, I mean, when I used to run marathons back in the day, my dad would always try to talk me out of every freaking marathon because he didn't want me to get hurt. He didn't want me to be uncomfortable. So we have to reframe how we think of hard things. Now, if something's frustrating and annoying and boring, that doesn't mean that you have to quit. Okay? So I have a solution on how to combat this mindset monster, this thing that like blocks us from like executing our best potential in the family court system. So this is what I would suggest you do. And I got a lot of these ideas from an author named James Clear. He wrote a book called Atomic Habits. Highly recommend that book. That book, if I had gotten that book when I was writing up my Supreme Court petitions and stuff, I would have been a lot better off. Because listen, the reason I'm telling you all this is because I have thrown adult temper tantrums about my entire case for many, many years. So I'm 11 years in. And it wasn't until very recently, I would say maybe in the past 3 years, that I've really started to acquire a positive and healthy and, I don't know if that's the right word, but I'll skip it, a really positive mindset around my court case. But for the first 8 years, I was a miserable 14-year-old flailing brat about my entire situation. And I focused so much on the problems and not the solutions. And we'll get into that in a second. But here's a challenge. It's not even really a challenge, but it's enough of a challenge where you're going to not feel like crap about the hard stuff. Now, before I get into the exercise that you could do, there's other aspects of this that I didn't mention. Even when you have to file a complaint, if your judge sucks and they break the law, knowing who to contact to file a complaint is grueling, difficult, frustrating, soul-sucking, and it's hard. And it's going to make you sick to your stomach to have to do this stuff. You're going to be like, I shouldn't have to do this. I shouldn't have to click through all these websites. I shouldn't have to call 20 people to get anyone to even pay attention. You're going to be frustrated and angry about that situation. And that's also going to block you from wanting to move forward. But it kind of ties into that whole hard, frustrating thing. So anytime you want to do anything with your court case, even if it's filing complaints, even if it's not knowing what steps to take, like, okay, well, do I file a federal lawsuit or do I file an appeal? You know, most people really can't do both at the same time. It's too much work. And then sometimes, or it's too much bandwidth for most people who have jobs and lives. And also sometimes the courts will play jurisdictional ping pong. They'll say, well, you have an appeal. I'm not going to touch it. Or the other court will say, well, you're filing a federal lawsuit. I'm not going to even look at. So like they'll play jurisdictional ping pong and neither one of them will look at it if you do both. So you kind of have to choose one, but how do you know which one to choose? So like there's a lot of really annoying, frustrating, and anger-inducing things that you have to start thinking about because the government decided to screw you out of having a relationship with your child. And so what I'm going to encourage you to do, if you decide to do these things like file an appeal, write that motion, stand up for yourself. That's kind of why you're here, right? You're here because you're interested in learning how to do that. I'm going to tell you that this is what I want you to do. Just pardon the fact that I have like the oldest iPhone known to man. This is from like 2014. I want you to open up your smartphone because I know you have one probably. And I want you to set your timer for 10 minutes. Put your phone down and say, right now, I'm going to start the process. You could write it in a journal if you want, or you could say it out loud or both. I'm going to start the process right now that is holding me back from being my best self in this court system. And I'm going to nail one of the things that I need to figure out. And I'm going to spend the next 10 minutes doing that. Now, 10 minutes, you're thinking, what, 10 minutes? You can't do anything in 10 minutes. Well, guess what? You will be 10 minutes closer to your goal than you were before. And 10 minutes builds up over time, like compound interest style, okay? Because you're going to use that time more effectively as you go on. In a week or two, that 10 minutes, you're going to be really, really powerful. The first few times you do this, you might spend 7.5 minutes just trying to find the practice book online. Like, oh, this is the outdated version. Oh, crap. Let me look for the new version. Like, all that stupid stuff. You're going to probably spend 7 or 8 minutes just doing dumb things that don't even mean anything just to get to the meat of what you're really looking for. And that's fine. Do that. Spend 7 or 8 minutes doing dumb things, looking for the right website, looking for the book, trying to figure out that attorney blog you heard about. Who's that one person that someone mentioned? All those like housekeeping things. Go ahead and spend 7 or 8 minutes doing that. Spend 10 minutes doing that. And then stop. When your alarm goes off, you stop. You say, that's it. I'm done for the day. The next day you do the same thing over again. Okay? This is what I got from James Clear. And I don't want you to feel like you have to push yourself. I'm not going to tell you not to go further, but don't feel like you have to do more than 10 minutes, because I want you to get in the habit of thinking that these are small 10-minute tasks that you just have to repeat over and over and over again. Now, in most cases, you get 45 days to write a brief. You get 60 days to write a brief. You know, you might have 15 days to do something called a motion for reconsideration. So like there's a lot of timelines on these court things. You might have only 30 days to get rid of your GAL if you decide you don't want to have a GAL, something like that. So you take that 10 minutes and learn those rules too. So just do 10 minutes a day, even on Saturdays and Sundays. You don't get to have a day off, okay? You have 10 minutes. If you have 10 minutes to brush your teeth and shower, you have 10 minutes to do this. And that's what I want you to do from now on until you're satisfied, until you've completed the task. This could be a year. This could be 2 years. But that's how long these things take anyway. It's going to take 2 years to figure out what you need to figure out. Complaining to the Attorney General, complaining to the Chief State Attorney, figuring out who the hell these people are. All that takes time, but you can do it because you can do hard things. You are smart enough and capable enough to do hard things. You have the grit, you have the tenacity, you have the soul. You are put on this earth to do this work, even though it sucks. You were handpicked, new word. You were handpicked by the universe to do this kind of work. Let me check my connection here, because again, Facebook's not letting me see you. Okay, apparently I'm here. Okay, people are commenting. That means I'm visible. Good. So I see that some of you are commenting, so I will get to those comments. So that's what I want you to do, and I want you to aim to, this is a James Clear thing that I stole from him. I want you to aim to be 1% better by the end of the day. So if you wake up in a really crappy mood, I want you to end your day in just a 99% crappy mood. So that's what I want you to do, and that's how you're going to overcome this cognitive academic block that you have about the court system. Because there's lots of blocks, don't get me wrong. You know, there's triggers, there's this, that. But one of the blocks that we have is like this academic crap. It's like being in 8th grade, maybe for me, because I was never a good student. But think about like when you took your SATs, like how overwhelming that was. So, but it's 10 times worse than that because this is government abuse, and you get it. So here's the second most common reason why parents have blocks about defending themselves properly in the court system. So don't hate me for saying this, because this was me like forever. Not only was this me before my court issues started when I was 30, but this was me through childhood, adolescence, and my 20s. Ask any of my ex-boyfriends if you don't believe me. Okay, just be like, what was the most annoying thing about Monica? And they'll tell you. You should start interviewing some of your exes, not the narcissist that's in court with you, but like, be like, what's some, just kidding. But the reason I'm kind of going to start yelling at some of you, because I think this probably applies to all of us, is because I went through this and I would yell at myself over this, and I have learned how to overcome it. So, and it's such a gift to have this behind me. Okay. When this is behind you, you could like do anything. I promise. You're going to be freaking powerful as hell. So the second most common problem parents have is that they focus way too much on the problem and not enough on the solution. 95% of their energy goes to the problem, and like a very little is the solution. And usually like what they're doing for the solution is just going into Facebook saying, hey, GAL committed fraud, what do I do? And then you'll get 50 people either saying, yeah, the GAL did the same thing to me, or family court sucks, or file a complaint. Like, it's going to be like not very good advice. Like, no offense. we don't know, right? I mean, where's the handbook on how to deal with government corruption? We're doing the best we can. Okay, there's nothing wrong with anybody for doing that. I've done it. Okay, I'm like the queen of that stuff. I've been in this for 11 years. I've done everything that I'm complaining about right now. I've done it. So when we complain about, when we spend way too much time on the problems, we get stuck in a victim mentality. Now, I literally came out of the womb as a victim. Okay, I'm totally talking about myself here. But we get stuck in our story, and the trauma that we went through can't move out of our bodies. Like it can't move through us. We can't process it. We can't digest it. And we just get stuck, and it becomes like a part of us unintentionally. And we are better than that. But we just get so stuck in our story that we can't see anything else. Like everything just gets so cloudy, and this story becomes like a veil, and it like shapes reality everywhere we go. It probably shapes the way you see the opposite sex. It probably shapes the way you see signing other contracts. You know, maybe you're afraid to hire a plumber now because they might sue you for $1 million. You know, I mean, there's just so much like distrust that you might have, health issues. There's just a lot of stuff that happens to us in our lives, internally, externally, when we focus too much on the problems and not enough on the solutions. Now, when I was a private coach for 3.5 years, I would do intakes with moms, and my intakes never really went well. I had to really restructure a lot of stuff with my business. It took a long time, and I had a really hard time focusing on the problem with my clients because the majority of our sessions were taken up by talking about the problems. I think I said that wrong. We didn't spend any time working on the solutions. There was too much time focused on the problems. And because I'm not trauma informed, I had to stop doing one-on-one coaching. And now I create digital courses. So I didn't realize how severe this problem was until I started doing it. And I went through it too. Like I couldn't get any help. I couldn't help myself. It was just, for about 8 years, I couldn't move out of my trauma. So when I started focusing on the solutions, I was able to snuff out a lot of the energy where I was spending a lot of time on the problems. Now, we all have the same story, and we could all tell our story in about 2 sentences. I wanted to split up from my partner, and the government came and screwed everything up. And my ex lied. Like my ex and the government conspired against me to take my kids away, or take my money away, or take my home, make me homeless. So it's all the same story. You know, whatever the details led up to it is not as important as the person that you have to become to manage it, because we have what it takes to manage this, and I'm going to get into that later on. So we can figure this out. We can move through this. Doesn't mean we have to like it. Like today's my son's birthday. My son's 14, and I did not see him at all. So, and I won't see him until, I'm going to see him on Friday, but I haven't seen him since last Monday. So it's normal for me to go 12 days without seeing him, and today's his birthday. So, and it's been like this since he was 3. So So I don't like that situation, but I have learned how to focus on, okay, well, what's next? Like what's going to happen from 2020 and forever? Because my biggest fear, the only thing I can think of that's worse than what happened to me, is having my own children go through this. And that would be worse than what I've been through. And so my entire mission, and I know a lot of you want this, you want to change the system. And so can we change the system by focusing on the problems? Like we have to be aware of the problems, of course, but is focusing on the story really going to help us in the future? So that's a hard thing to talk about. It can be triggering to hear me say this. It was certainly triggering when people would tell me this. I was pissed off when people would say this to me. And I even refused to speak to my mom for a period of time because she was one of the first people to point this out. So we're going to move on to the third stage. The third reason, which kind of ties into what I'm talking about right now, is that this might be a little controversial, but I really truly believe this. One of the other reasons why a lot of parents are blocked when it comes to defending yourself in the court system is that you haven't figured out that the triggers are gifts. The triggers are gifts. If you're triggered by something your ex does, if you're triggered by something your child does, if the judge makes a nasty comment about you and that triggers you, if the clerk is nasty to you and gives you a dirty look and that triggers you, all those triggers are gifts. Listen, your body loves you and your body wants you to heal. And if you're triggered, that's your body doing something. Your body's making you have heart palpitations. Your body's making your throat close up. Your body's giving you a migraine. Some people actually have digestive issues that are directly related to the court system. I was an abdominal therapist for 5 years, and I worked with a lot of clients with irritable bowel syndrome. And so a lot of people, their symptoms would become aggravated in the court, so they would be kind of incontinent. So like your triggers could attack you there, your stomach, heartburn, even it could get to you cognitively. It can make you not think straight, not speak straight. It can make you become paralyzed. I mean, think about what your body goes through when you're in court. I don't have to tell you this, you know? And so, and even outside of the court, just getting that bill from your GAL. How many of you walked down to your mailbox, pulled the bill out of the mail, and you don't even want to open it because you know it's your GAL sending you a bill for doing nothing and billing you excessively and lying about it. I mean, you don't want, just knowing that that piece of paper is in your mailbox is going to be a trigger often, right? And your child's birthday, your Christmas, your child's graduation, there's going to be triggers everywhere all the time. Hearing your ex's name, if your ex texts you. How many of you are triggered when your ex texts you? How many of you are triggered when you get that email come up or when you get a court notice in the mail? So there are triggers everywhere, and they're not going away, are they? Do they ever really go away? So here's the thing. If you're being triggered, that's your body saying, I want you to pay attention to me here. I want you to heal me here. And so I don't know what your belief system is, but I believe in the chakra system. So we have our root chakra, we have our sacral chakra, our solar plexus, our heart, our throat, our third eye, and our crown chakra. So if you don't know anything about chakra work, you could look into it. What got me into chakra work was dealing with the family courts. I wanted to heal myself, so I started looking into it. And depending on where what part of your body is triggered, it's telling you that it wants to be healed. It wants healing. So I mean, gosh, I've been a health coach for 8 years, and I specialized in digestive disorders for 5 years, and then I started working with parents. Triggers in the body are a sign that that part of your body wants to heal. So it's a sign that you have to give yourself lots and lots and lots of love, forgiveness, gratitude, self-care, tons of it. And I teach this in my course, The Best Interest of my Parent. The Best Interest of the Parent, I teach you how to take care of your body in this horrible situation. But the triggers, don't ignore the triggers. I was triggered recently. What was it? Okay, I was triggered. Oh, I know what it was. The Attorney General made a comment about family law recently. It was published. It was like maybe 4 or 5 days ago, and I was immediately triggered. I was so angry. I felt it right here. I felt like someone punched me in the stomach. And so I went into my room, I laid down, and I did like a 15-minute meditation to clear out that trauma. Like it was trauma that came into my body. It made me feel like crap. I went to my room and I released it. And so for you, it could be something like drink more water. Maybe that will help your headaches. Maybe just giving yourself love, giving yourself affirmations. Like, I'm doing a great job. I'm a great person. I'm a great parent. I live in my truth. I speak my truth. So there are so many things you can do to heal yourself. There are more things that you can do for yourself than what the pharmaceutical industry can offer, what a therapist can offer, because you're healing yourself. I believe that we have what it takes to heal ourselves. And we do need some guidance from external factors, but finding books to help you heal, there's so much work. Like, there's spiritual teachers out there that help with trauma. There's so much out there. Like, I don't even know where to start. I'm overwhelmed. I mean, right in front of me, I have my book. My book is primarily self-care. And by the way, if you want a free copy of this book, do let me know. You could just either put it in the comments. I have 6 copies. So if anyone wants a copy of the book, it's free today because you're here on the training. So you can either put it in the comments like, yes, I want a free copy, or just private message me and we'll figure out how to get you a copy. I'll just need your address and stuff. But this will teach you how to manage self-care, all sorts of stuff, and it will help you with your triggers. So if you're triggered by having to open up your court documents and figure out how to write an appeal because you have to look at this 50-page report that was falsely written, that's very triggering. So how do you help yourself with that? Like, instead of moving away from it altogether and saying, well, I'm not doing that because it's too triggering, why not do it anyway and then just heal yourself through the triggers? Now, I'm not trauma informed, okay? I don't have any trauma training. So I was thinking about getting trauma informed, but I decided not to. So my expertise does not extend out to actual severe trauma. So if you need help, do get yourself some help with this. Contact your therapist if you have one. Get some sort of professional help if you're going to be doing this on your own and you don't feel like you can safely heal yourself. But I believe that most of us can heal ourselves with the assistance of other people, props, things like books, candles, meditations. There's lots of stuff out there. So one of the tools I use is an app called Insight Timer on my phone. I use it all the time. And it's free. It's a free app, Insight Timer. I use a meditation for almost everything that bothers me in the world. It could be anything. If I didn't get enough sleep, I do a meditation to help me feel more alert. I mean, you name it. I do CBD oil. I don't drink alcohol. And so there's certain things I've done, but everybody has their own recipe on how to manage these issues. So I believe that not speaking our truth because it's triggering to think about these things that would facilitate us speaking our truth is not the way to go, because when we hold our truth inside us, we become sick. And when what needs to be said isn't being said, we get sick. We feel repressed. We feel unwanted, unloved, and we're not building a legacy for the next generation. So, and we're also not helping other people. We're not helping ourselves. So figuring out your triggers and moving forward anyway is extremely empowering. Extremely empowering. So I suggest that you look into this. You can contact me if you want more information. My course, I have 7 modules in my course, and modules 5 and 6 are all about this topic in particular. So if you're interested in learning about my course, do click the link in the description of this training, and you can learn more about that and get on the waiting list for the course, which comes out in 2 weeks. So I covered the 3 main blocks. There's a lot of other blocks. There's fear of retaliation, things of that nature. I do talk about that quite a bit in my podcasts and my YouTube channel, so I won't talk about that too much today. But let me just make sure I'm still connected. Let me pull you guys back up. Okay. Awesomeness. So when I announced this training, I asked people to send me their questions, and a bunch of people did. So I was able to kind of categorize them. And these are the questions that came up. So I'm going to start in order. And a lot of you could probably relate to some of these questions. So the first question I received the other day was, let's see. So I asked everybody, I said, what's blocking you from defending yourself in the court system? And this person said, it was a kind of a longer paragraph, but I'll just summarize. Basically, what she said that is blocking her was that she had an attorney that was really, really bad. So it was really the attorney that was blocking her. The attorney wasn't standing up for her. The attorney was signing forms without her consent. Her attorney was releasing documents without her consent. So she said, my attorney signed an agreement without my consent to terminate my rights. And she has no access to her child because of this. And so in a sense, what was blocking her was her bad attorney. So I don't know the whole story. I don't know if she didn't tell her attorney what she wanted. Maybe she did, and the attorney didn't listen. So whatever the case may be, because I know this mom is going to be watching, I'm going to answer your question. If your child is under the age of 14, and I'll tell you why I'm using that age in a minute, you could file in court to reopen your case based on fraud and reverse the termination of your parental rights on the basis of fraud and the fact that your attorney signed a document without your consent. You might first have to file a grievance against this attorney for that reason, or possibly file a grievance first. I'm not sure what the actual sequence you have to do, since I'm not an attorney. It might be worth spending an hour with an attorney. Go ahead and pay the couple $100 and be like, how do I reverse a termination of rights based on fraud? You can reopen a case based on fraud. There's no statute of limitations. So that could take a couple of years to do. And so the reason your child's age matters is because if your child's 16 and it takes you 2 years to figure this out, your child will be 18 by then. And then the issue will be moot, M-O-O-T. And one of the most creative tactics that the family law system uses is they will really botch up a case when the child is a teenager, because they know that the clock will run out by the time the parent is done with the appeals process. So especially really powerful parents who they know will appeal, they'll make it so that the appeal becomes moot. So the reason I said 14 is because it could take you 2 years just to get the attorney properly grieved if it works. But it could also take 2 years to undo the case based on fraud. I don't know if that would involve going to the appeals court, so I'm not sure where you would go. Well, you could bring up fraud in any court. You could go to any court and say, hey, there was fraud in my case. So that you could go into the family court, appeals court. I believe that's the case. So it could take 2 years just to adjudicate the whole fraud thing, and then another 2 years to have a new trial. So not only would it take you 2 years just to get rid of get this attorney thing straightened out if you're successful, it could be another 2, because then you'll probably get a retrial, and then that's another 2 years of litigation with your crazy ex. So if you find that that's just not feasible because of your child's age, what I would do is I have a workshop for parents and kids that are separated from each other that have no contact. I have a 2-hour workshop I could offer you. So if you're interested in that, just send me an email. You and I have been emailing already. Just say, I'm interested in that workshop, and I'll send it to you. And I really believe that workshop will help a ton. That's a tremendous workshop. So I hope that helps with your question a little bit. And another question I got was, let's see here. So this parent is blocked because she had ADA violations. So American with Disabilities Act. I'm really a huge proponent of the American with Disabilities Act. I think every parent should use it, no matter what. Whether you're disabled or not, you should use it, because it's a free, it's so accessible to have these rights implemented. It's really easy to have these rights implemented, and it's very protective of you. But anyway, there were ADA violations in her case. She said, what's the remedy? So this is a little bit separate from the actual training, but that's totally fine because she's one of my students, and I told her, I'll still answer your question. So what's the remedy when there's violations on the record, when someone violates your rights in some way, shape, or form? So in my opinion, it's quicker and easier to prevent future violations than to try to have someone punished for previous violations. Because this is the thing. Most parents would rather, well, I don't want to put words in your mouth. A lot of parents would probably be okay with doing a lot less work and getting their rights restored from this point on, or getting their rights acknowledged from this point on, instead of trying to punish someone for past behavior, especially when these a-holes have immunity. And it's also a lot more work involved in filing these complaints, because then you'll have to open up an investigation, open up possibly a lawsuit. So there's a lot of litigation that would be happening to manage what has already happened, and you're only one person. So I always think that parents, if you are going to be representing yourself, you don't have an attorney, because most parents don't have attorneys. Only 30% of parents are represented nowadays. So if you're going to be working on your own case, you only have so many hours in the day. I think you're better off learning your rights today, learning your rights on how to move forward, getting those ADA violations, or getting those ADA rights on the record. So I don't know if the ADA rights were put on the record or not. That's the one thing I don't know about your question. So what I'm saying for all you listening, if you don't speak your rights on the record, if you don't say, hey, I have the right to not be discriminated against for having a disability. I have the right to not be mistreated because I had postpartum depression. I have the right to not have my parental rights taken because I had anxiety and I take medication for anxiety. And I have the right to not be perceived unfit because I have a disability. So if you say that on the record and the judge violates it anyway and says, well, you're disabled, you're not mentally healthy, I'm taking your child away, without proving that you abused your children, then, and they violate it anyway, it's a lot easier to get remedies when you put your rights on the record and they violate it versus not putting your rights on the record and then they violate it. I think the fact that we have to put our rights on the record is kind of stupid, because it should be common knowledge that you don't violate people's rights. Like, these judges know that. I'm against the fact that we have to preserve our record. That's called record preservation. Some of you may have heard of it. Some of you may have not. I recommend Googling record preservation if this is something that is important to you. Because an unpreserved record, it's really hard to punish a judge or somebody else for violating your rights if the record wasn't preserved, versus the record being preserved. It's a lot easier to file complaints, but it's even easier to just move forward, even though it sucks that they did this stuff. I mean, look, my son's ADA rights were violated as well. My son has autism, and he was basically ripped out of my home because he had autism. So those are past violations, and I have not pursued any legal action toward the judge for that. And the judge should know not to do that. But I didn't tell the judge, I don't want my son to be discriminated against, being taken away from one of his parents because he's disabled. I never said that in the record, so my record was not preserved. So I hope that helps a little bit. But focusing on your rights now and today and how to move forward in future court hearings is a more efficient way to spend your time if you have only so many hours in the day. If you have unlimited time, then I would hire a civil rights attorney and go after the judge or whoever violated your rights. So I hope that helps. And the other part of this question was, how do you hold people accountable when the Department of Justice tells you that they don't want to get involved and the head of the state ADA coordination ignores your grievance because they know the judge screwed up? I can 1000% understand exactly where you're coming from. We have been through this. My husband and I have been through this. We have filed numerous, I would say, honestly, we've spent more time. I mean, we probably have stacks of papers this high on all the Actually, I think we could probably fill up half our basement with the number of files that the number of documents we filed to complain about these issues. Because my husband's court case is way worse than mine. My husband had 2 boys taken from him, and I had my son taken from me. So we had 3 boys taken from us. And we have been through it. We are still going through it. We have complaints against the Department of Justice, the ADA coordinator, because we both have disabled sons. I mean, we're in it now, and you're right. These people are not held accountable. So what do you do? Well, in my opinion, you get the 4th branch of government involved, and that is the public, the public. So I'm going to address that later. We're going to bookmark that, and we're going to address that later. But that is a very good question. I'm sure most of you watching have asked this question, like, how do you hold these people accountable? And if you listen to my podcast, I have said in the past that there's no one behind these desks managing these violations. It's a website and an address. So they put a website, violations.com or whatever, ADA violations.gov/, and then there's like an address where you can mail your forms in for your complaints. But there's no one there. There's no one's there. So I always say that it's like the window dressing, where you walk by a store and there's shoes in the window, there's a dress in the window, there's hats in the window, but you walk in and there's nothing for sale. There's just someone behind the counter, but nothing's for sale. You can't even buy anything there. It's just there to look like there's a store. So anyway, the next question, let's see. I think I had 3 or 4 questions that I condensed these to. Okay. So another person wrote in and she said, well, it's not really a question. I said, what's blocking you from going to the full extent and defending yourself properly in the court system? And she said she doesn't have the energy. She does not have the energy. If she had the energy, she would do it. And so that kind of ties into my 3rd point that I made earlier. Look into some healing work, chakra work, energy work, maybe even a medication if you're not already taking something that could just take the edge off of that. And I believe managing the trauma and metabolizing the trauma to the extent that you're able is key to getting your energy back to fight. And it takes time. And I think just, if you want to do that 10-minute exercise I talked about, spend 10 minutes a day healing yourself. Spend 10 minutes a day trying different modalities and see what works for you. It could be massage therapy. It could be chiropractic care. It could be reflexology. I've been a massage therapist for 10 years. I still technically hold the license, even though I'm not practicing anymore. So find different modalities to help you process this trauma, because I was a severely traumatized parent for a very long time. I came out of a damaged and destructive childhood. I got into a damaging and destructive relationship, and I had a damaging and destructing court experience, and I was a complete mess for almost all of my life. Like at least like something like 80% of my life I've been a mess. So which the healer is born when we process trauma, and you become a healer, and you are here to heal the system. You would not be writing to me, you would not be sending me questions, you wouldn't be here on this training if you weren't put here to do something major about what we're going through. So that is the answer to that issue that you sent in. So let me make sure I didn't forget anything. So yes, little something I forgot to talk about. So with your triggers, I want you to understand that with every single civil rights movement we've had, they've all been triggered. They've all been abused. They've been laughed at. They've been ridiculed in the press. They were made fun of on TV. Like black people, when they wanted equality, they were really treated really bad during that time. There was a lot of violence. Gay people, they took their share of beatings. I mean, I went to high school in the 1990s, and it was totally normal for a gay person to be beat up on the bus. Completely normal. And it didn't even faze me. Like if a straight kid was beat up on the bus, that would have been news. Gay kid gets beat up on the bus, nobody cares. That was literally the culture that I lived in. And I went to a pretty diverse school. So, I mean, I can't even imagine what it'd be like to live in a more conservative school district. So, and even like disabled people, how many of you remember when disabled kids were stuck in one classroom for the entire day? The kid that was 6 years old and had a hearing aid was put in with the 9th grader with the wheelchair, and they all were in the same room, a room about the size of this office, maybe like a 15-foot by 15-foot room with a giant conference table, and all the kids had the same curriculum with varied degrees of difficulty. And that was normal. There was like 3 special ed teachers in there, and they would just circle around the table and help the kids with their assignments. And the kids had recess all the time, and the kids had like their own gym class. It was unbelievable how badly these kids were segregated. I mean, a kid with a hearing aid was put into the same room as a child with severe mental impairments. Completely unacceptable. Nowadays, all those kids are integrated in the same classroom. And that was from the IDEA law from 2004, but I believe that law started in the 90s. The American with Disabilities Act didn't even come out until 1990. Like, I was in pre-adolescence when the American with Disabilities Act came out. Before that came out in 1990, it was completely normal to not let somebody into a public building if there were no wheelchair ramps. I mean, the amount of discrimination that disabled people went through is unbelievable. Disabled people were put into institutions. They were forcefully drugged. They weren't given the right to vote. If they were intellectually challenged, they couldn't vote. They couldn't make decisions for themselves. I mean, we're talking just a few IQ points off the norm, So people with disabilities are treated much better now than they were then. Gay people are treated much better. Women, look at what women had to go through just to vote. It used to be that we couldn't vote because we were too emotional to vote. And that was just 100 years ago. So what they had to go through to get where they're at now was very painful, and they were triggered all the time. I mean, there were times where they couldn't even walk to the bus stop without fearing for their safety. So I'm not saying it's acceptable. I'm not saying, hey, this is a good thing, but it's a natural process that humanity has had to go through, and not just in America, South Africa, India, all over Europe. I mean, everywhere you go, like Asia, there was always an underclass fighting for equality and justice, and it was very painful, and they were scared, they were triggered, they were retaliated against, they were brutalized. And so I don't see what we're going through as any different. And it doesn't make it right, but this is what I do. I say, well, I don't know if systemically is the right word, but when you look at all the other systems that reached equality at some point, what we're dealing with the court system is really no different. So try not to take it personally, even though it is personal. And you're making history by being a part of this movement. Just by sitting here watching this video, you're making history, because all of these civil rights movements start with this: talking, learning, standing up for yourselves. So have faith that this will be fixed, okay? And all is not lost. because we are the fourth branch of government, and I believe in my soul that it's going to take parents getting together in groups of 1,000 or more and simply protesting. And that's how it has been done with all these other groups. We just have to get together and protest. And a lot of protesters, or a lot of people, won't protest because of the issues I already talked about. So standing up for yourself in court is a form of protest. It's a form of peaceful resistance. And I think it's better to do it that way than what we've been doing. And what we've been doing since family courts started in like 1970 something is just taking the beatings and not standing up for ourselves. You know, dads are getting talked into being the every other weekend parent in the hallways of the court system since like the 1970s. And I'm still seeing it all the time. I mean, there's parents that we've just become so accustomed to not having rights, especially if you're a dad watching this. Like, you've probably grown accustomed to like, oh, dad's every other weekend parent. That's just the way it is. And we need to change the way we think about this. We need to understand that this is wrong, but we do have what it takes to turn this over. So this is ending on a very positive note because we do have what it takes. And so one of the reasons I built my course, The Best Interest of the Parent, was to help parents get to that place where they're not a victim anymore. They're not stuck in their fear and their shame, and they're not stuck in their trauma, and their body's not suffering anymore. And so I also teach parents how to set proper boundaries with the other side, your ex's attorney, the judge. We didn't really talk about boundary setting here, but that's something I cover very heavily in my course. And I cover quite a bit of educational stuff, like what rights you need to know, what rights you have, etc. And also, one of the most important things that we have to embrace is a positive mindset. In spite of our pain and trauma, we have what it takes to develop a healthy mindset all around these issues. So I'm so glad that you came on today, and I'm going to see what we have for comments. Oh my gosh, we have 1 million comments. Let's see here. Do you recommend any audiobooks for reprogramming after lifetime abuse? So I have found that the reprogramming piece is done best with one-on-one energy healing, like a one-on-one coach. I have a recommendation if you want to work with her. She's the person I've been using. If you want a recommendation on a specific person, I'll send that to you. I don't know if books are good with of work to that magnitude. It's pretty deep, you know, reprogramming. Truthfully, I don't know of any books, but also I'm curious to see if anyone can offer insight on books on reprogramming after lifetime abuse. Looks like you got quite a few replies to your question, but I'm going to put my answer into your thread here, and you could just hop onto that podcast episode. It's like 15 minutes long, and hopefully you'll get some more insights there. Let me move on to the next question. Let's see. So my GAL won't respond to my email regarding her incorrect billing. She also said since my child doesn't look mixed, she would do better at a less diverse school. She put that in writing. She's a psycho. Yeah. So the problem with GALs is that if we give consent for GALs to come in and generate these opinions, it's really hard to later say, hey, I really don't want that GAL's opinion in the record. Now, most of us aren't willfully giving up consent. We're not like, yeah, GAL, woohoo. Most of us are forced into it. And if you don't appeal, it's considered consent. So let me just rephrase that. A judge will say, I'm going to order you a GAL. And usually the parents are like, well, I can't afford it, or I don't really know how I feel. Well, I'm going to order it anyway. If the parent doesn't go and appeal that, it's considered consent. So that is equivalent to somebody raping you or beating you up on the street. And if you don't say, stop beating me up, you're consenting to being beat up. And I think that is such a horrible, horrible system. So Whitney's talking about the GAL, like the GAL said this, the GAL said that, and, you know, incorrect billing. So if the parent doesn't push back on the GAL and say, no, getting the GAL is a violation of my constitutional rights because I don't want another person speaking for my child. That's my job as my child's parent. It's my job to speak for my child, not a third party. I don't want to give up guardianship to a third person, blah, blah, blah. If the parent's not saying that, then the parent is consenting, even though it was the judge's idea in the first place to put this in. So it's coercive and it's invasive to have this, but if the parent isn't appealing or objecting or filing an objection, it's considered consent. So it's really hard later to try to get something that the GAL did punished because they have immunity, at least in my state they do. And it's a horrible system. I'm completely against GALs all the time. All the time. The only time I think a GAL, here's the exception, if the child doesn't have any fit parents, maybe a GAL. Even then, it's still iffy. So let's see here. Let me look for questions here. Okay. So I like this. So Montana Marie says, I did my first YouTube video, but afraid to do any more because the abusers will see and hear things that the kids disclose. So what you could do, Montana, is you can get what I call a ghost writer, or like it's a YouTube channel, like a ghost speaker, and have your friend or this person, I mean, you could go on like Fiverr.com and hire someone to speak this for you, or you can do a blog. You could do a blog and see if you could get a friend to volunteer or just pay someone to do videos for you. And I think that's a great idea. I think that's a wonderful idea. You know, like a lot of TV shows are written by other people. A lot of memoirs are written by other people, ghostwriting, things of that nature. So if you need to get your message out, which I think you should, and we all have a message that we need to get out. We all have to reveal our truth. And so if you don't want to deal with, any, I think you said harassment. Yeah, you're afraid the abusers will see. Then I would just get someone to do it for you with your content. That's what I would do. That's a really good question. So let's get into some more questions. Let's see, they gave... Okay, I'm still looking for some questions here. A lot of you are talking amongst each other, which is awesome. A lot of really amazing input here. Okay, so Robert says, a lot of groups exist. Unfortunately, the main issue is doing the paperwork. And for most of us, I think it's hard enough to do on our own, but I've used a paralegal who was able to help me. Okay, good. That reminds me. If you are like, ugh, I don't know if I could do all this academic stuff on my own, I believe in most states you can hire an attorney to work off the record for you, where they're not filing an appearance, but you're just paying them for their time. And they give you advice, they tell you how the law works, blah, blah, blah. They could even like edit your motions for you, but they're not filing an appearance. And what's great about this arrangement is it gives you a lot of autonomy, because you don't have to worry about a chicken shit attorney not defending you in court, because that happens all the time. I just did a live stream on this like last week. And so there's a benefit there, because you don't have this barrier where this attorney is too afraid to do their job, but you still get the benefit of having this like legal counsel helping you. And B, they don't have to file an appearance. Their presence in your life isn't going to be known to anybody. And they don't have to like get into a car and go to court and get beat up by a judge, because these attorneys are treated like crap by these judges as well. And that's why they're so chicken shit. They really are. They're cowards. But at the same time, can we really blame them when we have these awful, nasty judges? You know, you spend $200,000 to go to law school just to get beat up by someone who thinks they're God, and they don't want to have their career thrown away. And that's another gigantic problem in the system. I'm a big, big fan of going pro se in court, because we have way too much like red tape on our rights, and we have like a chilling effect on our ability to use our rights, because we have attorneys that won't do it for us because they're afraid. So I think working as a pro se parent is a really, really great idea. I really recommend it if you're in the right mindset and you could really help take care of yourself in the process, which is really difficult to do, but you can do it. So I'm going to look for some more questions. I think I got all the questions. Thank you so much, Joellen, for saying that. Okay. Do you know any civil rights attorneys knowing about the GAL drill near Stanford? I personally don't. Melissa, I think I sent you 2 names already. Maybe I didn't. But I'll try to get those names for you. There's 2 names that I think would possibly help. But if you haven't gotten those, then I'll send them to you. Let's see. Yes, you guys make some great comments. I think I got to all the questions. A lot of really powerful comments here. So I appreciate you all coming on. And again, if anyone wants a book, I have 6 copies. It's first come, first serve. If you want, these are leftovers from a promotion I did. So if you want a book, let me know. We'll get your address. We'll have this sent out to you. And if there's no other questions, I will be ending this. And if you want the recording of this, then send me a private message and I'll make sure that you get the recording as well. So yes, that was a wonderful hour and I appreciate all of you. You're all wonderful. If you want to learn more about the course that I offer, do click the link in the description and we're going to get going. Joellen, thank you so much. So just for the record, Joellen, you're the 100th member of this group and I didn't make you answer any of the questions because I know that you support shared parenting. So you're special. Great. So we're going to be ending tonight and I appreciate you all and I hope you all have a wonderful night. Okay. Bye-bye.